Risk of Rain 2 has a reputation for being one of the best roguelikes out there, but after 6 years of updates and free DLCs, it can feel about as approachable as a rampaging elephant that's also on fire. So the big questions are, can a brand new player these days actually get into Risk of Rain 2? Do you need to buy the DLCs to get anything done, and is it actually fun or just a punishment simulator? So I jumped in blind, got smacked in the balls by giant balls, and found that the answers are a bit complicated. The tutorial is shorter than the instructions on a water bottle. It's basically shoot at enemies, go through portals, and good luck. How do you get stronger? Yeah, just open some chests, I guess. What does the timer do? It laughs at you. And what do the items do? Well, wouldn't you want to know? And so, run after run, I would spend 20 minutes desperately trying to get something going, only for a giant monster to materialize out of nowhere and instantly turn me into a lawn ornament. At that point, I was genuinely starting to think that I got tricked, that the game might have been overhyped and that I just kinda wasted my time. To be honest, I just wasn't having fun. And then, one fateful run, it all finally clicked. After stumbling around like a drunkard on roller skates, I somehow ended up with a build so ridiculous I could barely tell what was happening anymore. My abilities basically had no cooldown. The screen was just endless fire and explosions, and I could zoom around so fast that gravity became nothing more than a polite suggestion. And suddenly, I understood why people sink hundreds upon hundreds of hours into this thing. For the very first time, I wasn't just treading water, I became the problem. And this happened because Risk of Rain 2 lets you become powerful. Not powerful in the sense that you just get big numbers, because lots of games do that. But the kind of power where it starts to feel like you're just breaking the game, because you kind of are. The frustrating part is that none of this is obvious when you're first starting out. The game never really explains why one run turns you into a flying demigod while another ends with you being used as a squeaky toy. If someone had simply gone over a few basic things, how to loot efficiently, why the timer matters, and what makes a build truly work, I would have fallen in love with Risk of Rain 2 a lot sooner and with a lot less pain. So what exactly changed? Why did I go from wanting a refund to losing entire evenings? Ironically enough, it's because of the thing that annoyed me the most at the very start. The timer. That damnable thing never stops ticking. Which means that while you're busy admiring the scenery or climbing the world's tallest mountain to grab a chest, the game is very sneakily making everything nastier. More enemies, bigger enemies, angrier enemies. Eventually, you basically fight God. At first, I really hated this. Not God, but having to rush constantly. But then, after about 7 to 8 runs, I finally figured out what the game is doing. The timer isn't there to punish you. It's there to make every decision slightly annoying, but in a good way. If you spend too long looting, the enemies will become terrifying. But rush ahead too quickly and you'll find yourself dealing so little damage that the boss won't even acknowledge your presence. So every run ends up being this balancing act between greed and self-preservation that is honestly very, very fun. And when that clicks, it is just fantastic. If you're ahead of the curve, you can fly around the map and straight up bully God. If you're behind, every fight is a desperate struggle to avoid becoming a funny blurb in the local newspaper. Do they even still have those? Well, either way, things stay exciting all the way from the start to the very end. But honestly, it's not the difficulty that got me hooked, it's the characters. Risk of Rain 2's roster is kind of wonderfully weird. One guy is all about running around and going pew pew. Another prefers to kick back with a cold brewski while his turrets do all the work. And my personal favorite solves all of his problems by vomiting on enemies. Now that is truly inspirational. But more importantly, they all play differently. Strategies that work perfectly on Mr. Shooty Shooty Bang Bang can get you instantly torn apart if you're playing Teemu Genji. Every character has their own rhythm, preferred items, and little quirks that actually take a bit of effort to really learn. Which means that the moment one starts feeling like old news, you can just switch a new character and suddenly you're learning the game all over again. Which is when I realized just how dangerous this game really is. A single run lasts close to an hour, which sounds perfectly fine for a roguelike until you start absent-mindedly chaining them and then BAM! It's the middle of the night. And that's before you even start chasing unlocks. New characters, alternate abilities, weird secrets that honestly I have no idea how you're supposed to find on your own. And then there are artifacts. My absolute favorite because they're essentially mutators that can take the game and then just shake it until something strange happens. One can make enemies get their own items and level up alongside you, which is pretty much perfect if you want a lesson in humility. And if you want an instant dose of chaos, there's one that can double enemy spawns but halve their health. And those two, well, they are the more reasonable ones. Now the artifacts are hidden about as well as the nuclear launch codes, but they are still well worth hunting down. Not only do they add a ton of replayability, but they also let you tailor the game into whatever flavor of madness you enjoy the most. And that really is great. But what about the DLCs? Do you actually need them, or can you just stick with the base game? Well, this is a question I am uniquely qualified to answer, because I own none of them. My friend, however, owns all of them, which means that with the power of multiplayer and his poor financial decisions, I have experienced both versions of the game. And in my humble and completely objectively correct opinion, you don't need the DLCs. They add more variety, more characters, and a couple of outrageous toys to play around with. But I've spent well over a month with just the base game and I have never felt like the game was holding me hostage. The DLCs feel like actual proper expansions. They're fun extras rather than content that was chopped off from the base game and then sold separately at a premium. That said, if you do want to throw money at the screen, I would start with the Survivors of the Void. It is the only expansion that got me consistently excited whenever its content showed up. The corrupted items can completely change how your build works, and the Void Zones are basically like finding a free buffet out in the middle of the desert. I mean, sure, you have to clobber a bunch of enemies to get in, but the rewards are always worth the brain blamage. As for the other two, I prefer Alloyed Collective over the one whose name I honestly cannot even remember, which probably should tell you everything you need to know. My brain being a sieve aside, they honestly are both perfectly pleasant expansions. I just never found them to be nearly as exciting as Survivors of the Void. So if you ever reach the point where you're considering a Risk of Rain 2 tattoo, then yeah, by all means, grab all of them. But otherwise, start with the base game, maybe get Survivors of the Void, and just kinda see where that takes you. Which brings us to the original question. Is Risk of Rain 2 actually worth starting as a brand new player all these years later? After doing it myself, the answer is yes, but with one caveat. The opening hours are rough. The game is terrible at explaining itself. And because of this, you'll likely spend your first few runs wondering why you're getting one-shot by toy robots. But once it clicks, it really clicks. Risk of Rain 2 is this wonderful balancing act between complete panic and complete insanity. One run you'll be desperately trying to survive, clawing any advantage you can get, and then the next you'll be flying across the map at Mach 10 while instantly deleting anything that dares to look at you. And the more you play, the more ridiculous things tend to get. So if you're a fan of roguelikes and don't mind leaving a few dozen teeth on the floor during the learning process, you'll find dozens upon dozens of hours of honestly worryingly addictive gameplay here. Even now, I'm still finding new and innovative ways to throw my winning runs straight into the void. But every time it happens, I also just cannot help but click play again. And honestly, that right there is probably the strongest recommendation I can ever give. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe, as that really does help me out a lot, and I'll hopefully see you again soon. Bye bye!